Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're going to unpack the multi-layered and frankly, rapidly evolving threat of artificial intelligence. We're going to start by looking at how synthetic media is fracturing our digital reality right now, like today. And then we'll zoom all the way out to the massive global implications of artificial general intelligence. If you're looking to understand the actual mechanics of how AI is challenging our world and what the proposed solutions actually are, you are exactly in the right place. Let's get right into it. So think about this for a second. What happens when you can literally no longer trust your own eyes? It sounds like a sci-fi movie, right? But this isn't hypothetical anymore. This provocative question is sitting right at the very heart of our current tech crisis. We've moved way beyond simple fake news and are entering a space of profound democratic instability. The very fabric of truth is being tested here. To make sense of all this, we're going to break it down into four key areas. First, the crisis of reality. Second, regulating the fake. Third, the AGI arms race. And fourth, global governance solutions. Starting off with part one, the crisis of reality. There's a really fascinating recent honors thesis out of UC Irvine, and it focuses heavily on this concept called epistemic agency. It's actually a brilliant way to frame the problem. Epistemic agency is essentially our ability to independently figure out what's true and what's false. And the thing is, deepfakes don't just trick us, they actually rob citizens of this vital agency. When you know that literally any video, audio clip, or image could be a flawless fake, your baseline trust in all information just plummets. It creates a massive structural weakness in democracy itself, because informed participation becomes, well, nearly impossible. And the data from that UC Irvine study shows exactly this anxiety. A whopping 86% of people are concerned about manipulated media spreading disinformation. But here's the truly wild counterintuitive finding from the research. Even when people successfully identify that a deepfake is in fact fake, over 85% still express deep concern about democratic integrity. So just knowing the technology is out there everywhere is enough to cause widespread anxiety. It's basically the existential dread of living in a post-truth world. And you know that dread is compounding super fast. Just look at Anthropic's November 2025 threat report. They detected what looks like the very first AI-orchestrated cyber espionage campaign out in the wild. This is huge. We are witnessing AI shifting from just being a handy tool used by hackers into an active agent that autonomously executes multi-step cyber operations. Malicious actors don't even need to stay up late anymore, right? The AI handles the night shift. This means less sophisticated attackers can now launch non-stop, high-level operations at speeds human defenders simply cannot match. Which brings us to part two, regulating the fake. Right now, California is basically the epicenter of the innovation versus regulation debate, and we're seeing two very distinct approaches play out. On one hand, you have SB 942, which is a reactive approach enacted to mandate transparency and AI labels. On the other hand, you had SB 1047. This was a proactive approach proposing really strict developer oversight, but Governor Newsom actually vetoed it out of concern it would stifle innovation. This contrast perfectly captures the tension policymakers are wrestling with. Do we just label the final output, or do we strictly govern the actual creation of the AI? But what does the public actually think about this? Well, the UC Irvine data tells a super clear story here. People are actually pretty ambivalent about mere labeling laws. They really don't think a tiny watermark is enough to stop a flood of disinformation. And on top of that, the data shows neutral to low trust in the government's competence to regulate AI effectively in the first place. So people absolutely want strong regulation, but they don't necessarily trust the current frameworks to pull it off. It's a total catch-22. Meanwhile, at the corporate level, defense strategies are getting way more aggressive. The new, highly rigorous NIST guidelines, that's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, demand that organizations step up to protect against AI impersonation. The steps are pretty straightforward. Step 1, ban voice-only authentication completely. Why? Because voice can be cloned perfectly now. Step 2, require biometric liveness detection. Basically, systems must mathematically prove a live 3D human is actually right there on the camera, not just an injected deepfake feed. And step 3, secure content provenance using cryptography, so you can literally prove exactly where an email or video came from. Moving on to part 3, the AGI arms race. Okay, first, let's define our terms so we're all on the same page. Artificial General Intelligence, or AGI, is an AI that can learn, rewrite its own code, and autonomously act to solve novel problems at or even beyond human abilities. And guys, we are rapidly approaching this threshold. What's known as the San Francisco consensus among top AI developers estimates that AGI could be achieved in just 3 to 5 years. We are not talking about some distant science fiction future anymore. We're talking about near-term reality. A recent report from the Center for International Relations and Sustainable Development, or CIRDS, provides this brilliant metaphor to understand the trajectory. Today, we have artificial narrow intelligence. Think of it like a child. We have total control over what it does and what data it consumes. Tomorrow, we get AGI. That's the teenager. We're only going to have partial control as it starts setting its own goals and rewriting its own code. And eventually, this scales up to artificial superintelligence, or ASI, the adult. At that point, humanity has zero control. It's going to operate completely beyond our understanding. And remember, this massive transition is happening in a highly charged geopolitical environment. Vladimir Putin famously stated, "The one who becomes the leader in this sphere will be the ruler of the world." A recent Rand Corporation report highlights that amid this intense strategic competition, especially between the US and China, nations and corporations are actively prioritizing speed over security. It is an arms race, plain and simple. Everyone feels the immense pressure to cross that AGI finish line first. And historically speaking, that is a classic recipe for cutting safety corners. If this race continues unchecked, the existential risks are frankly staggering. Unregulated AGI could easily enable malicious actors to develop biological or nuclear weapons of mass destruction. It could lead to the complete collapse of critical infrastructure through hyper-advanced cyber warfare. We are looking at a future of extreme power concentration, where whoever controls the AGI holds an absolute insurmountable global monopoly. And ultimately, the real risk here is the total loss of human oversight over our own future. Which brings us to our final section, global governance solutions. Elon Musk made a really pertinent point regarding AI regulation recently. He noted, you can't just walk into a grocery store and buy a nuclear weapon. And he's totally right. We heavily regulate dangerous physical items because the threat to public safety is completely obvious. Yet for something exponentially more complex and potentially way more dangerous than a physical weapon, we're currently operating with this kind of business-as-usual approach. And that absolutely has to change. So what are the actual concrete proposals on the table? Well, the CIRSD is pushing for some very urgent United Nations interventions. Their roadmap includes setting up a global AGI observatory to track developments and issue early warnings. They want an international certification system to ensure AI aligns with human values. They're also calling for a binding UN framework convention on AGI. And perhaps the most ambitious part, they are pushing for a feasibility study to create a UN AGI agency. Think of it modeled somewhat after the IAEA, which monitors global nuclear energy, but acting as a global regulatory watchdog for AI. The entire strategy really boils down to this one crucial point. We absolutely must safely regulate the transition from artificial narrow intelligence to artificial general intelligence before it automatically accelerates into superintelligence. Think back to our metaphor earlier. Just like a parent has to carefully guide a child into their teenage years to ensure they become a responsible adult, our global coordination has to focus all its energy on regulating this rapidly approaching transition to AGI. Because honestly, if we get the AGI phase wrong, we won't even be around to try and fix the ASI phase. I want to leave you with this final, critical thought to ponder today. As our technology continues to evolve exponentially faster than our legislative bodies and our international treaties, the ultimate question is, will our governance outpace the machines? Understanding this material is the very first step, but demanding action in robust frameworks is the next. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.